20 years ago, the Federal Communications Committee abolished the long-standing fairness doctrine that required broadcast media to give equal time to divergent views on public issues. In the years since, the budgets and broadcast time allotted for hard news reporting have contracted severely at the same time that their news audiences have grown older. Some voices warn that the segmentation of media may make it too easy for Americans to hear just the views they want to hear rather than the facts they may need to hear. Public television's NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has not needed a fairness doctrine to fearlessly and impartially report the news and analyze it in depth. Its self-effacing star is the antithesis of infotainment. Jim Lehrer hails from America's heartland, born in Wichita, Kansas, schooled in Beaumont and San Antonio, Texas, and then the University of Missouri. After 3 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, he worked as a newspaperman in Dallas and then migrated to television news. He joined the public broadcasting system in 1972 and covered the Senate Watergate hearings with Robert McNeil in 1973, and 31 years ago began the McNeil-Lehrer Report that has evolved in today's NewsHour. Mr. Lehrer has been honored with numerous awards for journalism, including a Presidential National Humanities Medal in 1999. In the last 5 presidential elections, he moderated 10 of the nationally televised debates, most recently the first debate between George Bush and John Kerry in September 2004. As concern mounts about eroding independence and standards of American journalism in the face of political and commercial pressures, Jim Lehrer remains a respected professional whose objectivity and intelligence have earned the trust of millions of viewers. I am indeed honored to welcome our Commencement Day speaker, Dr. Jim Lehrer.
Thank you. Thank you. As the single freshest graduate of Harvard University, remember, I was the last one to get. In fact, I'm so fresh I still have my robe on. And that makes me the most recent new member of the Harvard Alumni Association. I would like to say to Larry Summers that on behalf of everybody in this room and everybody associated with our school, we accept your challenge and we will make it happen, sir. I don't know about you all, you're probably used to this, but I was really impressed with the rundown on the financial condition. But that aside, on behalf of the 9 of us who received honorary degrees today, we as a group would like to pledge to begin the new group of the class of 2006, we would, as a group, like to pledge $127 billion. Go way beyond Alston, way beyond Alston. This is truly a great day for me personally. In fact, in the words of my three-year-old granddaughter who is here, Olivia, this is what she would call a hoot and holler day for me. In the morning, I am awarded an honorary degree, and now as the commencement speaker, I have the opportunity to cause second thoughts for everybody who had anything to do with what happened this morning. And I thought I would make those folks particularly nervous by beginning with a bus call. You heard several references this morning to the fact that I have a bus background. And that bus background includes, in the 1950s, I worked as a ticket agent in the Continental Trailways bus depot in a place called Victoria in South Texas. And one of my duties was to do this into a microphone. May I have your attention, please? This is your last call for Continental Trailways, 8:10 p.m., Silverside air-conditioned through liner to Houston. Now leaving from lane 1. For Inez, Edna, Ganado, Louise, L, Campo, Pierce, Wharton, Hungerford, Cannleton, Beasley, Rosenberg, Richmond, Sugar Land, Stafford, Missouri City, and Houston. All aboard? Don't forget your baggage, please. Now, you may be asking, what in the world does that have to do with anything that's happening here today? First of all, I try very hard to include a bus call in every speech I make. For good luck. The second thing, it does serve a real purpose this afternoon. Kind of. 50 years ago, almost to this very day, I received my undergraduate degree in college. The commencement speaker was a man who wore the gaudiest red tie I had ever seen in my life. And he wore it because he said he wanted us, the class of 1956, to remember him. He said, nobody in their right mind, particularly those graduating, listens to commencement speeches, so you won't remember anything I say, you won't remember my name or even what I look like, but maybe you will remember this awful red tie. Well, I've just proven him correct. I remembered the tie. He was also right. I did not remember his name, and I did not remember what he looked like. But he was wrong about one very important thing. I did remember what he said, more or less. I paraphrase from vague memory. Since you will not remember a word I say, I have chosen to say very little. Good luck in your life from this day forward. Try to be kind to one and to all, and to yourself. Thanks for the honorary degree, and have a great afternoon. He gave us a little nod, and then he returned to his seat. As you can imagine, to great and thunderous and thankful applause. And so, since you will not remember a word I say, I have Nope. No such luck. No thankful applause right now. But in keeping with the man's basic principles of commencement addresses, I promise not to keep you long. And here comes the purpose. And think of the bus call as my equivalent to his red tie, something to remember me by. Journalism is my line of work and is at the heart of why I am standing here today. But the kind of broadcast journalism we do on the NewsHour is the ultimate collaborative enterprise. As I suggested at a Shorenstein Center Kennedy School event here a few weeks ago, getting pretty faces like mine on and off the air takes villages of talented professionals. Thus, whatever honors come to me, including those of today, I accept them always for them as well as me. Also honored in my case are some guidelines that I also shared with that earlier Harvard audience. They are my personal ones that we use at the NewsHour in our practice of journalism. I wrote them down several years ago at the behest of a seminar being held at the Aspen Institute. Do nothing I cannot defend. Cover, write, and present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me. Assume there is at least one other side or version to every story. Assume the viewer is as smart and as caring and as good a person as I am. Assume the same about all people on whom I report. Assume personal lives are a private matter until a legitimate turn in the story absolutely mandates otherwise. Carefully separate opinion and analysis from straight news stories and clearly label everything. Do not use anonymous sources or blind quotes except on rare and monumental occasions. No one should ever be allowed to attack another anonymously. And finally, I am not in the entertainment business. I have come with only one major commencement-like point to make, you'll be delighted to hear, and let me put it simply and directly. I believe we should consider adopting some form of national service. No, not a return to the military draft, something entirely different and completely new for us. National service in its fullest meaning. My reasons have to do mostly with what I see as an urgent need to address the growing state of disconnection we have in our country today. But it is based also on my personal experiences, which flow directly from something else I did on my graduation day 50 years ago, besides listen to a man in a red tie speak. I went with my parents from the commencement ceremony to a building on campus, and I raised my right hand and was sworn in as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. I spent the next 3 years as an infantry officer, mostly in the Far East. It was between the Korean and Vietnam Wars. I saw no combat, fired no rounds in anger, had none fired at me, had no roadside bombs kill fellow Marines of mine. I was spared events like that might have triggered losing control, to going over the top of civilized behavior into angry barbarism, as has been charged a group of Marines these days in Iraq. But my Marine service was a life-changing experience for me, a positive one, that had I not had, I most likely would not be standing here today, because I would not be a person deemed worthy for such an honor. I went into the military because I had to. Join on your own or be drafted was the choice. I chose the Marines for personal, not heroic, or, as you can clearly see, physique reasons. My dad had been a Marine, and so had my brother, so I would be a Marine. That required service changed me and the life I have led ever since. My travels up till then had been restricted pretty much to central Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, and South Texas. My mode of transport was mostly on Trailways buses. But as a Marine, I took my first plane ride to Washington, D.C., and then on eventually to California, and to Japan, and to Okinawa, and to Taiwan, and to the Philippines, and to, essentially, the world. My friends and acquaintances up till then had been mostly people who looked, talked, and thought like me. But now I was eating, drinking, sleeping, sweating, and running up and down hills with and listening to and depending on people who had little in common with me. Some spoke and looked different. Most were larger and stronger than me, a few smaller. Some were smarter, others dumber. Some were rich, others poor. Some were wonderful people, others were less so. Some wouldn't hurt a fly. Others sometimes deserved to be hurt by flies. In that diverse company, I learned to be responsible for others. I learned to depend on others and to understand what being depended on by others really meant. I learned that there was more to the world than me and my kind, that there was more to my life than me, and me. I learned there was joy and satisfaction to be had by looking past the mirror, by serving common interests rather than only those of self. I am grateful my country forced me to serve my country, not for my country's sake, but for my own. My 3 years of service connected me to the rest of the world outside myself, and the connection has been permanent. The experience also left me with a firm conviction that beyond the benefits to individuals, connecting and connections are essential for our democratic society to work. And speaking now as a journalist whose job it's been to pay attention to such things, I have never seen us more disconnected from each other than we are right now. We are splintering off into segments, interest groups, lobbies, target audiences, blogs, boxes. Our racial, cultural, and religious differences, always our great strength, have become an instrument in our great disconnection. Our growing economic differences, as Larry put it brilliantly, are feeding this. Our politics of the moment actually seem to be encouraging it. And our otherwise terrific explosion in new media outlets for information and debate are helping facilitate it. I believe what we need is a new, hard, real-world dose of shared experience. We had one after 9/11, and it drifted away. We had one after Katrina, and it went away. We have yet to even have one on Iraq. A show of hands, please. In this room, how many of you know someone personally who has served or is now serving in Iraq? How many of you know a person or a relative of a person who has been killed or wounded in Iraq? Raise your hand if our being at war in Iraq has had any direct effect on your life at all. What's left, I believe, for us all, the issues of the war in Iraq aside, how do we connect ourselves and then stay connected to the other Americans who do serve in the military and elsewhere in our name, on our behalf, without having to sustain a tremendous man-made or natural disaster? I would submit one way is, in fact, service itself. Service in all of its many forms. Service that can mean the Peace Corps, a teacher corps, a conservation corps, a police corps, a hospital aid corps, a tutor corps, a big sister, big brother corps, a coping corps, a pick up the trash corps, as well as the Marine Corps. I do not have a specific 10 or 12-point proposal to put on the table. I am a journalist, not a proposalist. But I do have some framing questions for the discussion. In order to be fair, should it be mandatory? No exemptions, no permanent deferments. Everyone eventually serves. Should it apply across the board, men and women, all physical and intellectual sizes and abilities included? What should be the age parameters? Should there be a way to involve not just the young? Should it be constructed around choices, each individual choosing the form of service, military or specific civilian he or she wishes? Should it be developed in partnership with private and corporate resources as well as governmental? Should it be tied to a GI Bill type program, service earns education, home, and other benefits in addition to the benefits of connection and of the soul? I know some will argue that such a program would cost too much. I would only ask, compared to what? Others would argue that for it to really work politically, it must be voluntary. I don't do politics, so I will leave the politics of national service to someone else. But voluntary service is what we have now. The result, to my observation at least, it may be cheaper, but it's also causing a serious heightening of our differences and our disconnections. and definitely not just as it involves the military. My guess is that all of you in this room, alums, students, parents, whatever, have an interest in volunteer public service, and that you have no doubt already done some of it and will always continue to do so. Am I right about that? Yes, absolutely. No question about it. But voluntary service, the kinds that you perform and the kinds that I perform, is not an equal opportunity operation. Non-military volunteerism is pretty well confined to the well-educated and the well-off. The majority of Americans are simply not in a financial position to delay careers, to take no-pay internships, to take off a year or two, or even a few weeks, or even a long weekend to do good, to help people rebuild their homes in New Orleans or Indonesia, do tutoring of low-income kids in Los Angeles or Des Moines, find food and shelter for the devastated of Darfur or Biloxi. So we have a rather stark division among us. The most fortunate volunteer for the non-military, the less fortunate volunteer for the military. And those in between, the vast majority of Americans do neither because they can't afford to. I know for a fact I would not have voluntarily gone into the Marine Corps 50 years ago. I would have gone directly from my commencement ceremony to my job that I already had as a newspaper reporter, which is what I did 3 years later after my service. Trust me, I was a much better reporter then because of how I spent those intervening 3 years, and a much better person and even commencement speaker now, 50 years later. The bottom line for me on this is simply this. Whatever the ultimate conclusion, I believe passionately that we would all benefit from a full and frank discussion of our mutual responsibilities to serve, of the joys and satisfactions that come from such service, from lifting ourselves away from our own needs just for a while to pay attention to those of others, and of trying to find a way that involves every one of us. I am well aware of the collateral debates that would most likely spring from this one. One has to do with going to war. National service with a military option would complicate decisions of presidents and Congresses about using force. Parents and spouses and children of the potential combatants would have to be in the loop, along with the volunteer experts, the pundits, the politicians, and the generals. Some would argue that's a good thing, because it would force more public explanations and justifications, and thus harder thinking before rushing off to invade or to bomb. Others would say that's terrible, because the result could be a hand-wringing public referendum on every military use decision our country makes. And back and forth, and back and forth, and so the debate would go, and I say let that debate and all others on national service begin. And as they say in other venues, thus ends the rendering of the message. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. But let me add very quickly, I am not urging any of you, students, alums, faculty members, members of the administration, parents, to run off and join the Marines. And I say that because one of the first major commencement addresses I made to a college graduating class, my theme then was risk. Take risks in your personal lives, your professional lives, and I went on and on about the joys and satisfactions to be had from a risk-filled life. A few weeks later, phone rings at our house in Washington after midnight. It's a young male voice on the phone. It says, "Mr. Lehrer, you changed my life." I was trying to wake up. He said, "I was in that graduating class I heard what you said about, in your commencement address, about taking risks. I was in the class. I had already taken a job on Wall Street. But when you said that about taking risks, I changed my mind, and I decided to do what I wanted to do in the first place anyhow. And as soon as the ceremony was over, I told my mom and dad, no Wall Street. I was going into the business of making sunglasses frames with clear plastic tubes where you could change the color with little BB-like things. You want red, white, and blue one day, you want pink the next, you want whatever. And he said, I've done it, Mr. Lehrer. I'm going to be on the CBS Morning News tomorrow demonstrating my frames. I figured you'd want to know. Thank you, sir, for changing my life. Now I was really awake, and I was thinking, oh my, what had I wrought? And of course, mostly I was thinking that his parents probably had a hit out on me by then. So in the unlikely event one of you all does decide to join the Marines today, pick up and go and run and go and do it, fine, simplify, but please just don't tell me about it. For the record, I do now know about my own commencement speaker 50 years ago. I went to my university's website the other day. He was a popular novelist, screenwriter, and playwright at the time. So what this means for all of you, 50 years from now, if you want to know about the commencement speaker today, you can go to www.harvard.edu and find out who he was at the time. In addition, of course, to remembering that he began by calling a Continental Trailways bus to Houston. And now, as the man said, good luck in your life from this day forward. Try to be kind to one and to all and to yourself. Thanks for the honorary degree, and have a great afternoon.